Welcome to this journey through Africa's past, a historical retelling created purely for education and cultural awareness, shared to educate and keep our heritage alive. Today, we will continue into South Africa. By the time the British were stitching Nigeria together and the French were marching through West Africa, another storm was brewing far to the south, a storm glittering with gold and diamonds. South Africa. A land of breathtaking beauty, endless grasslands, rugged mountains, and coasts kissed by two oceans. But beneath its soil lay something Europe could not resist: treasure. Gold in the rivers. Diamonds in the rocks. It began in the 1600s when Dutch settlers, the Boers, landed at the Cape of Good Hope. At first, they were just farmers, trekboers. They called themselves pioneers looking for land. But with land came conflict. Indigenous peoples, the Khoisan, the Zulu, the Xhosa, were pushed off their ancestral grounds. Their cattle were taken, their homes burned. The Boers claimed they were chosen by God to tame the wilderness. But for the people who lived there, the wilderness was already home. Then, in the early 1800s, Britain arrived. They wanted control of the sea route to India, and the Cape was the key. The Boers resented them. The British outlawed slavery, taxed their farms, and ruled with arrogance. Tension boiled. So the Boers packed their wagons and left, beginning the Great Trek, a long, brutal journey north into the interior. They founded new republics, the Orange Free State and the Transvaal, determined to live free from British rule. But destiny, as it often does, had other plans. Because in 1867, a young boy found a glittering stone near the Orange River. It was a diamond. 2 years later, gold was discovered near the Witwatersrand. Overnight, South Africa became the heart of the world's greed. Thousands rushed in, prospectors, fortune hunters, imperial agents. Cities like Johannesburg sprang up from the dust. Mines ran day and night, swallowing men into their dark bellies. British capital flowed in, and so did exploitation. African men were forced to leave their families to work underground, living in compounds like prisoners. The wealth of the land was being sucked out, shipped to London, while its people were left in the shadows of the mines they built. The Boers, now rich from their republics, refused to share this new wealth with the British. So, as gold fever burned hotter, the fuse of war was lit. At the turn of the century, war erupted. The Boer Wars pitted Britain, the empire on which the sun never set, against the stubborn farmers of the veldt. It was supposed to be quick. It wasn't. The Boers knew the land, fought guerrilla style, and made the British bleed for every inch. In retaliation, the British scorched farms, burned homes, and built concentration camps, the first of their kind in modern history. Tens of thousands of Boer women and children died from hunger and disease behind barbed wire. African civilians too, caught between empires, suffered in silence, their stories barely told. By 1902, the Boers surrendered. The British flag waved over all of South Africa. But victory came at a cost. The land was broken. The people were divided. And beneath the ashes, something darker was being born. In 1910, Britain created the Union of South Africa, merging its colonies and the Boer republics into one dominion. On paper, it was progress, a new country. In reality, it was an alliance of white rulers. Black South Africans, the majority, were excluded. The laws that followed turned racism into policy. Land Acts stripped Africans of their farms. Pass laws restricted their movement. Native reserves were created, tiny fragments of land for millions of people. The mines needed cheap labor. The system needed control. Thus began the machinery of oppression that would later evolve into apartheid, a word that means apartness, but in practice, meant a cage. Even before it was named, apartheid was already in motion. Black miners were paid a fraction of what white workers earned. Townships grew on the outskirts of cities, full of families separated by labor contracts. Children grew up knowing their fathers only from letters. The British had given independence, but only to the white minority. The Africans who tilled the soil, built the railways, and dug the gold that powered the empire were left voiceless. And yet, even in silence, resistance was growing. In 1912, African leaders formed the South African Native National Congress, later renamed the African National Congress, ANC. It was the seed of a movement that would one day shake the walls of injustice. The story of South Africa in the colonial era is a story of paradox, of dazzling riches and deep wounds. The diamonds that sparkled on European crowns were dug by hands calloused and scarred. The gold that built cities was mined from beneath the feet of people who could not walk freely in them. Families were torn apart. Languages silenced. Land turned into property. And all the while, Europe looked on, counting profits, writing reports, and congratulating itself on civilization. But history has a way of remembering differently. Beneath the dust of oppression, something was stirring, a quiet, defiant heartbeat. Because for every system built to divide, there were voices rising to unite. South Africa had become the jewel in the empire's crown, and its most painful wound. The seeds of apartheid had been planted, the soil watered with injustice, and the storm was only beginning. But far across the continent, in the west and east, whispers were growing louder, whispers of rebellion, of freedom, of nations daring to dream again. World War II was coming. The empires would soon tremble. And Africa's children were ready to rise. To them, freedom was not a gift. It was a fire waiting to burn. Thank you for watching. Please like and share for educational purposes only.